Google was quite busy over the holiday period, so a number of updates to share with everyone. And the first one is an update to grading in Google Classroom. They've now, well, actually, I'm going to say finally, because I wanted this 10 years ago. They've finally enabled the grade all functionality inside of Google Classroom. So what that means is, rather than going down a list of students and entering a grade for every student, this update allows you, when you have something like where you want to maybe an exit ticket or to mark something has been submitted. So in a case where you have a binary grade, 0 or 1, for example, this is really useful. You can mark all of the students at one time as having turned that in or not turned that in. So it could be exit tickets. It could even be attendance. It could be, if a Google Classroom is for some kind of activity, it could be marking attendance in that. There's many different ways that can be used, but now you can mark all from within the gradebook with the same grade, obviously. Next up, an update for Gemini. Actually says Google Gemini Premium. Actually, in the bottom left, this actually applies to Gemini Education and Gemini Education Premium. So within Google Classroom, there are 4 different tools currently that you can use, including generate a lesson plan, generate a lesson hook as well. Well, now there's going to be an additional feature where you can generate vocabulary lists. So a teacher can generate a vocab list for a classroom around a specific topic and year or grade level. And that will include a definition of the word, a relevant example, and so on. So that will be AI-generated word lists inside of Google Classroom. This feature will only be available to educators that have a Gemini license, whether it's Gemini Education or Gemini Education Premium. Okay, a little update to, this comes out to everybody, an update to Google Drive. Local files are now syncing faster to Google Drive. There's a couple of updates to Google Drive recently, one around video playback as well, but really it's just about the, I guess, the accessibility or speed of use, the responsiveness of using Google Drive. So you'll see those uploads should process much more quickly. Okay, an update to data loss prevention for Google Drive files. So we were previously able to add a rule where you could disable download, print, and copy for a file if the end user is a viewer or a commenter. But now you can enable the same rule whether they're a viewer, commenter, but also an editor as well, or even an owner. So given an example use case for this, if you have a data loss prevention rule in place to protect the sharing of credit card numbers, so financial data, so you can put in place a rule to prevent the sharing of credit card numbers. Before, you could only restrict the downloading, printing, or copying of viewers or commenters, but now you can prevent those same activities for editors and owners as well. And of course, you can combine that with drive labels also. So just a slight enhancement to those DLP rules. Gemini's had, and again, this is Gemini Education and Gemini Premium. Gemini's had an update where you can now interact with PDFs in Google Drive. So from Google Drive, you can right-click the file and access Gemini, or you can use a side panel, but you can interact with PDFs without having to go out. So without having to put it into Gemini Chat, for example, you can do that all directly within Google Drive. So you can get a summary of the file, you can ask questions about it, or you can use it, obviously you can use the content and generate other content. Okay, this is an exciting update for OAuth consent. I think, Peter, I'm going to bring you in to share this one.
Hey everyone, yeah, so this update is relevant to users using AppScript. So if you have a script in AppScript, and let's say that script needs to access both Google Forms and Google Sheets, currently what happens is the first time you run that script, you need to give it consent to access your account, and it will just get access to both of those services which the script is requesting. So the update here is this is going to be more granular in the future. So the user running that script could choose, actually, I only want the script to access my Google Sheets data, but not Google Forms. So looking at more granular control of this in the future. It's starting with AppScript, and I believe this is going to roll out to extensions as well in the future. But if you're an AppScript, if you're creating AppScripts, this is something you'll need to be cognizant of in the future. building this into your code to handle those exceptions when a user doesn't select all of those services which your script is requesting. So yeah, an interesting update which I think will be expanding into extensions as well in the future.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Okay, and I mentioned earlier there's been a couple of updates to Google Drive, and we've seen, I think that image is wrong. Ignore the image showing just there. Google Drive has had an update where where previously when you upload a video to Google Drive, you have to wait for it to process before you can hit play on the video. So ignore the screenshot on this slide. What you can do now is upload a video to Google Drive and you'll be able to play it immediately. So in the last few months, video playback in Google Drive has had a couple of updates. One of them was around using a more streamlined player, in fact, using a YouTube player essentially within Google Drive. And this one now allows you, when you upload a video, you can play it back immediately. So again, just better usage of Google Drive for video. Because I know a lot of schools always questioning whether they should host video in YouTube for playback. Well, if they want to host video in Google Drive, it's making it much easier to share it for playback to students. Update for Gemini. Again, it's Gemini Education, Gemini Premium again. These are compliance frameworks, sort of SOC 1, 2, and 3. It's just a quick one here. Gemini's now achieved SOC 1 compliance in addition to SOC 2 and SOC 3. These are for the Gemini add-ons. It's just, again, providing more security, confidence and security of Gemini. Okay, an update now to recovery information with on end user accounts within Workspace. Now you have the option to allow end users to add their recovery email information or their phone information to their accounts. So for example, you might not want to do that for students, but you might want to allow end users to add their own recovery information on their accounts to make it easier for end users to recover their own accounts if they get locked out or if they are asked for an additional, if there's an additional login request. We were talking about this earlier and Peter had a good point. You might want to be careful about turning this on if you are being governed by GDPR, so in Europe, because this would enable the collection of personal emails and personal phone numbers as well. So good call out on that, Peter. So again, this is turned off by default. You would have to turn this on manually. Okay, AppSheet, we talked about this a couple of times last year. This is fully rolled out now. There's now, if you're using AppSheet across the organization, there's a new AppSheet admin console. This is really needed because before this, you didn't really, admins didn't really have oversight of who's using AppSheet and what apps are out there. Well, now you do. There's an AppSheet admin console and you have full insights into the most popular apps, who's owning the apps, view counts, user counts, and so on, and you can export all of that data. Interesting thing about AppSheet, and this is really exciting to hear. So in December, I was in Hong Kong for a Google meeting, and we had Stu Lowe and his team from Renaissance and the team from Peak School as well, Keith and his team from Peak School, shared their AppSheet apps, which are really amazing. But what's really interesting, Samuel, one of the Google engineers at Google Hong Kong was there, and he was saying how amazing the AppSheet usage was in education compared to business and enterprise. He was really impressed with some of the things that people are doing on AppSheet. So hopefully we'll get Samuel on board for one of these calls in the future. So he's with Google, and we can talk a bit more about AppSheet usage. Okay, update to migrating messages from Teams to Google Chat. Charlie was sharing with me how important this is because it's actually not very easy to do. But if you were to be, I'm not sure if this impacts anybody here, but if you are migrating from Microsoft Teams to Google Chat, there is now a tool to enable you to migrate messages as well. This update is relating to the scan capability within Google Drive. I use this quite a lot, actually, especially on my personal account. I'm always scanning receipts, invoices, or other files when I'm traveling. They've improved the scan capability greatly. And if you look at a screenshot, it kind of shows how much better it is. The scan image on the left has got those shadows. the right has all been cleaned up. And that's exactly what they've done. So if you haven't used a scan capability in Google Drive recently, do go back and check it out. It is really useful, and it works very, very well to clean up your scanned images. Okay, we were just talking about this a few minutes ago. So within Gemini, so if you have a Gemini license, you're now able to translate messages in line. This is an end user setting. So if a user has a Gemini license, they will be able to turn on a setting to translate messages in line. So for example, if you receive a message in another language, for example, French, that message is written by the French speaker and left in French. You, as the end user, if you wanted to translate that to English, for example, you would be able to have that automatically translate. You can kind of see from the animated GIF what it looks like there, but those messages would automatically translate. There is a list of supported languages, 120 supported languages, so you can check that out to see if you have Gemini, if that would be helpful to you. We're going to talk about Notebook LM Plus. This is really exciting. So if people remember, a couple of years ago, Notebook LM was a Google Labs feature, and then it moved to an additional service about 1 year ago. It moved to an additional Google service, which is great because we could roll it out. We could roll it out to users as an additional service. Google has launched an enhanced version of Notebook LM called Notebook LM Plus. I won't go into too much detail because I'm going to let Bogdan talk about this. But essentially, it gives you some enhanced features if you have a Gemini license. So yes, it's a new version of Notebook LM, but it's included with Gemini. But I'll let Bogdan go into that in more detail. Another update to Google Chat. Google Chat has improved the way in which mentions are handled. So if you have a group chat, and if I'm sending a message to Bogdan, for example, but Bogdan's not in that chat, I'm able to mention Bogdan and either send him a message without adding him to that group, or add him to that space or that group chat, or I can add him to that chat directly just by mentioning him. It will come up and say, do I want to add him to the chat? So in a similar way, the @ sign is used for drive chips. We're going to be able to use that for mentions as well, and just improving that whole process. Another sort of slight visual improvement is the way in which mentions are handled and how they appear and how unread messages appear as well. So just like general usability improvements to Google Chat. In addition to the chat improvements, there's new usage reports for Google Chat as well in the admin console. So you go to the admin console, you can look at your usage reports for Google Chat and look at adoption and trends and so on across the organization. Especially good if, I know many schools face this challenge, if staff are using third-party apps such as Line or WhatsApp or the plethora of other chat apps to communicate, and you're trying to move people into the domain and get them onto Google Chat, it's good to monitor the uptake of Google Chat. Again, I think almost at the end of the updates, I think, Peter, I was going to get you to talk about this one. The groups editor and groups reader roles.
Yeah, thanks, James. So yeah, just some new privileges available in the admin console, so you can be a bit more granular about what admins can manage on groups on your domain. As before, if you had the groups manager role, that would let you do anything with all groups on a domain. Now this can be just scoped down to particular rights within those groups as well. And this also links well to another recent update. I think last month, Google have now made it possible for limiting modifications of groups on Google Workspace if you're syncing them and creating more groups on another system like Active Directory. So yeah, that's this update.
Thank you, Peter, for that. I can't remember if you mentioned this last month or not, but Gemini, if you have Gemini licenses, there is usage reports now include usage per app as well. So if you want to monitor where people are using Gemini and how much they're using it, you can now do that from in the admin console. So again, if you're an administrator, you have Gemini apps, those Gemini usage reports are much enhanced now. forget if we mentioned this. I suspect we maybe didn't, but the final update to for this month was again to Gemini, and it was mentioning using folder support within Gemini. So previously, when you open the side panel, you can see within, this is obviously Google Drive, we can see the side panel on the right-hand side here. When you open up the side panel, rather than mentioning a file, now you can mention a folder. So if you want to understand the contents of a folder, or if you want to use the contents of a folder for something else, you can mention that folder using the @ sign again, and it will enable that. Okay, that's it for the first updates of 2025.